Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. I haven't really got a name. Crazy Kane, that's me. Hello. So, Adam and I have been playing Hellpoint in co-op and we have just finished the game. As a new feature for the stream and YouTube channel, we'll be having a conversational type review thing at the end of the stream, so we can tell you what we thought.
Hello, how's everyone?
They're not going to answer
Yeah.
this. This is a YouTube video.
I know.
There's no chat or anything.
It's just a courtesy.
Yeah, sure. Fair enough. Hellpoint. Adam, what can you tell me about Hellpoint?
First of all, it is something which I did not expect I would be playing, because it is a sci-fi Souls-like game, and this is probably my first Souls-like that I've ever played. Horror, I have never played Dark Souls. So yeah.
I've never finished a Dark Souls game. I have played multiple Souls-likes, but oddly enough, not Dark Souls. I mean, I've played Dark Souls 1, I've played a lot of Dark Souls 1, but I never finished it. I did finish Chronos Before the Ashes, which I thought was very good, although some people might say it's not much of a Souls-like. And I've played through Ashen a lot, but I haven't finished it. But, you know, this is the first one I've played from start to finish. The main reason is because of the co-op, although most of them have some sort of co-op. Actually, that's probably a lie. The main reason we picked this one is because GOG gave it to you for free, so it was there for us to play in co-op. But apart from that, the main reason was because of the co-op.
In fact, if it wasn't for co-op, I doubt I would have been playing this game. Would have been sitting in GOG for God knows how.
Would you say you were glad you gave the game a chance?
Yes, I would say that it opened me up to a new genre, and it was interesting because it was co-op. I'm going to keep saying it.
That's fair. So, you know, we know it's a sci-fi game, sure. What is the setting? What's actually happening in Hellpoint? So I'll start with saying, I don't fucking know. It's a very confusing game, but that is pretty much how Dark Souls is. Dark Souls is the kind of game where you learn through the environment, and it's very confusing if you don't pay a lot of attention, and I think Hellpoint is the same, so it captures that very well if that's what you want. What I have gleaned is that we were in a space station called Irid Novo. Everyone was dead, and we were created. We were like a clone that was created by some sort of AI, and it wanted us to collect data for whatever reason, and I don't really know the rest. Adam, can you clarify?
Let's say this. I'm a bit like you, where I have no clue what the main story was. However, what I did gather was that, like you said, space station, Irid Novo, everyone dead. They were experimenting with a black hole, possibly to access like these beings to give them knowledge or technology. I'm not quite sure if I understood that part.
Well, I mean, typical sci-fi, there's only two reasons you mess with a black hole, and it's either going to be for travel or it's going to be for power.
This is it. But that power corrupted.
What a surprise.
And that's where then you come in to basically get this knowledge. Now, again, I don't know if it's because you are supposed to then collect this knowledge so that they continue learning about this, let's call it experiment.
So, I don't want to spoil the ending too much, but the ending kind of implies that, yes, if you give this knowledge to the computer, you're furthering or continuing the thing that caused the tragedy, and that's considered the bad ending or not the ultimate one. So you're probably right, and we didn't want to do that.
But then with the rest, I'm not quite sure.
I will say there's probably enough information in there that if you are better at paying attention than us, you're probably going to get a really good story out of it. But we were just running around killing things, looking for bosses, you know. We were interested sort of in the setting. I'm not saying we weren't, but you know, it's like Dark Souls. If you don't pay much attention, you just want to play a fun action RPG and get your ass handed to you a bunch of times, that's what this game can be as well. But I think there's enough in there to tell a good story if you want it, but we didn't quite get it. Gonna be honest with you.
You also have to take into account that there is a lot of information. Partly the objective is that you get 100% lore.
Yeah, so it's 100% of what you need. 100% doesn't mean you've got all the lore in the game. I think I've read that there's like up to 150 or 156% or something like that in the game. But obviously you need up to 100%. But the important thing to note is it doesn't literally just mean lore. So if you read some text, if you find a library and you read some text, you get like a percent or something. But if you kill a boss, you get a small amount of percent. If you kill a big boss, I don't want to spoil what they are, you get like 33%. So if you kill two big bosses and then just explore a bit, you're gonna get it, and that's how we did it. So your equivalent to campfires in this are these rifts in these tears in space and time, which each time you find one of them, they give you a certain percentage. I think each time you fight an enemy for the first time, you get a percentage. So, you know, doing anything in the game gets you data. That's what it's called, data, not lore. And ultimately, like I said, there is up to 150 something percent in the game, so you don't have to worry about like missing one piece of text on a wall and fucking your run over, because I was generally worried about that throughout the game until I read that there is more. But as long as you find the bosses, like you'll do it. It's fine.
No, agreed. The only consequence is, of course, if you're going for the enemies, the portals, or the breaches rather, and you're not really looking at the library entries and that, you're going to be left a bit in the dark of what is happening around you.
Yeah, it's not quite like Dark Souls. In Dark Souls, apparently every single item in the game has like deep lore behind it, and as well as the world around you, like you'll see what's happened around you, and that kind of tells the story. But if you read the descriptions of items, it's always got some history behind who had it before you and what it was. You don't quite get that in Hellpoint. Hellpoint, it's literally just reading logs about, you know, what the scientists did before you came along, that kind of thing. You know, but it's a good enough way to tell a story, I guess, but it wasn't a game I played for the story, and I don't think I would recommend it for the story. Like, you want to play it because it's a Dark Souls action game, but there's enough story there to justify why things are happening. I think that about covers the setting.
I agree. Yep.
What did you think of the game visually?
I mean, visually, it was dark. It was, I wouldn't say eerie, but it definitely gave this impression of a space station that was a derelict. A lot of dark corners, some areas were completely dark, other areas where you had these organic matter.
Yeah.
So it all seemed to tie in with the fact that this place has gone to hell.
Yeah, I dare say Irid Novo had a lot of personality. It didn't feel like any space station I've ever seen in any other movie, game, any other media, ever. Whether it's I've already forgotten all the names of the places, but you know, we had Port Isadun, which like you said is the one with all the like fleshy stuff, so that place got taken over by something. There was the observatory, which was kind of very librarian-like, you know, like data-focused kind of thing. You had like the city areas where people would live, and there was that really nice big garden. It had a lot of variety. Every area looked very different, and Irid Novo was probably the main character of the game. Like, exploring it was the important part. There wasn't really any interesting characters apart from Irid Novo itself, which was a genuinely interesting place to be. The enemies, there was this, it's kind of almost like Warhammer 40k, where in a lot of cases they're science fiction but almost like religious. You know, there's this kind of heavenly look to some of the enemies, for example. Celestial, I guess, is a good word. It was interesting. I thought it was a very interesting look. It was definitely an original look for a sci-fi game. It doesn't look like any other game. I mean, in some ways, like the areas could look like Warframe and other places could look like other games, but as a whole, I think it had its own very distinct, unique look.
One thing which I would add is the locations had personality and presence, not just with the enemies. For example, you would go into an area where you'd see just piles of corpses. So it gave you a bit of more of a story, like, okay, this is, say, the dumping ground. This is where everything went bad. Yeah,
and that whole area felt even more derelict. Not derelict necessarily, like poorer. You know, like this was the slums.
Exactly.
This was the sewagey area. Like, I don't remember what that place was called, but it felt like it had its purpose, and its purpose was the people who work or live here, they weren't paid well, let's put it that way.
Yeah. But saying that at the same time, in the, let's call it the upper class areas, then you find, say, people that couldn't take it anymore. You see them hanging from the ceiling, something like that, or maybe there was a ritual.
Oh yeah, a lot of the game, it felt ritualistic. We walked in on a couple of rituals, and like I said, some of the enemies, they've got this kind of almost angelic, celestial look to them.
Yep. So this is it. There is that presence to the area. You're not just seeing enemy here, enemy there. They have purpose. They have character.
Absolutely. I think that more or less covers the visuals. So, what did you think of the general gameplay, Adam?
Up until I got used to the controls and that, I made the mistake of taking it as a hack and slash game. 9 out of 10 times, I probably went into a boss fight and got my ass handed to several times. So it first took me a moment to get out of that mindset. Once I got out of that mindset, I actually quite enjoyed it because there was a bit more tactic involved. You know, it's not just start wailing on him, make sure you have enough stamina, make sure you can get out of there, tackle a fight differently, because maybe one boss you go from the front, another time you might have to go from the back, so on and so forth.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there with the word tactical, really, because it's definitely the most tactical. When I say it is, I mean like Souls-like combat is the most tactical melee combat, save from games like Chivalry and Mount and Blade. But no, it is some of the most tactical melee-based combat in gaming because of the distance you have to keep, the blocking, the stamina, all of that stuff. And actually, it makes it very difficult to go back to hack and slash games because they feel way too button mashy. Like on the Switch right now, I'm playing Darksiders, and it's a fun game. It's really good. Like the exploration and stuff is great, but the combat, whenever I get hit, it usually feels like, what was I supposed to do? Like there's no good blocking, the dodging doesn't feel right, the attack combos just feel button mashy. It's a good game in and of itself, but after playing so many Souls-likes, it's kind of hard to go back to that kind of game. The combat in Souls-likes is really fucking good.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'd say this game does it quite well. So it's not as detailed as Dark Souls. So like in Dark Souls, if you swing a sword next to a wall, you might actually hit that wall and block your shot or your sword swing. This doesn't happen in this game. But pretty much everything else does. So, you know, you've got your stamina, you've got your blocking, you've got your stagger. It's all there. It doesn't have instant kill parries and backstabs, because that's a big part of Dark Souls. In this one, you might do extra damage from behind. I could never tell, honestly. And if you block at the right time, you can like stun your enemy, but you can't then go into a canned animation where you're doing a big stab and doing shitloads of damage. But it's very dynamic combat, always moving, always trying to be in the most tactically advantageous position. Fighting multiple enemies was always kind of scary because if they get behind you, you're kind of screwed, but also exciting because it was just fun. Bosses were generally quite fun.
Yeah, most of them were fun. There were a few stressful ones, but...
Yeah, apart from the maybe secret, maybe optional final boss that was absolute bullshit, there was one fight that we really remember being frustrating, and it was less the boss's fault, and it was more the arena was far too small, and so we couldn't dodge the boss's attacks. Apart from that one, I don't have any strong feelings about any other boss. Like, I wouldn't say any of them were amazing to fight, but none of them were frustrating. And honestly, I've played enough games where the bosses have pissed me off that just saying the bosses were forgettable is fine.
Trying to think, one thing which I would also comment about was, for me, it felt like there was very little point or use to the items you collected.
Actually, yeah, that was my next point as well. I didn't feel like there was a lot of gear variety. Now, I think for advanced players there are, because I've played online with randos a couple of times and they looked completely different to me, but just looking at the stats, there's clearly one armor set that has the most defense and the least stamina usage, like the ancient gear, and it feels like there's no point in using anything but the ancient gear unless you're going for some of the more advanced playstyles like the magic heavy ones or the gun heavy ones. But I feel like in general with most Souls, like most people tend to go for the melee builds because that's
easier.
Well, the easiest to get your head around, I guess. So if you're going for that kind of build, it feels like there's no point in any other armor sets ever. Like, I think we picked our favorite weapon and armor set in the first 20% of the game, for example.
And we stuck with it.
And then just never changed it.
Yeah, and not even to experiment.
Yeah.
We just stuck with the same build.
At most, you can craft up your gear, so you'll have like the ancient warrior set, and then you can craft it into, once you find the blueprint, into the Revolute warrior set. And so it's still the same thing, but it's a straight up upgrade. And that's the only time really I felt the need to change the armor.
Yeah, agreed.
And does it even count because you're changing into the same thing but better?
Exactly, it's just an upgrade.
Yeah. But it might be worth trying, different builds at some point, but I think we've got what we want to out of the game and might not be revisiting it anytime soon.
Another comment which I would say, on the goods hand, it's that the game encourages a lot of exploration. You might have an area which looks very short because you're going to see the boss area very close by, but then there's quite a lot of routes and passages where it encourages you to explore. However, then the bad side of it is that you can get completely lost, because while you might be required to do something and there are subtle hints as to what you need to do, it doesn't exactly clarify where you need to go. So we tended to struggle to find certain areas or where we need to go just to accomplish these tasks. Let's be honest, if we did not have help, we would have struggled a whole lot.
Yeah, so I agree with you there. The exploration being encouraged is a good thing, obviously. I agree with you that, a lot of the times we'd go into a new area and we'd find the boss room within the first 5 minutes, but then we'd spend another hour just exploring around the boss area, trying to find all the little side paths and stuff to find whatever gear and upgrades and whatever we could. And that was fun and rewarding and no complaints there. But also, you're right, there is absolutely no guidance. Like, at first it feels like you're being guided by the level design, so it's there's this area, then there's that area, then there's that area, and then eventually it's just like, okay, but now where do you go? And it feels like we followed what felt like the obvious path until we got to a dead end, and then we just had to figure it out. For the most part, that wasn't a problem, because as long as you're exploring new areas and gathering data, you're still working towards the end goal. But that's where the alternate endings, or the true ending, comes in. So there's basically two NPCs in the whole game. Actually, there's three actually, but one of them is not important. So there's two of them, and you have to talk to them, and you have to do certain quests for them. And if you do them, you get the quote-unquote proper ending. Otherwise, the game just ends after you hand the data, or you don't hand the data and you fight a certain boss. But if you do, then you get another boss, and if you do one of the quests, you get one boss. If you do both the quests, you get two bosses. But there's no indication that this is a thing. You can completely miss meeting these two NPCs, and when you find them, they want you to craft something for each of them, and getting the blueprint for the thing is hard enough. Getting the actual stuff you need for it could be anywhere. There's absolutely no guidance for where to go. And simply put, these quests, I would say, are pretty much impossible without a walkthrough. Like, if you, on your first run anyway, you're gonna miss it unless you specifically have been told, and this is what you want to do.
I agreed on that, yes.
We decided we're gonna do it because we looked it up, and we did use a walkthrough. I'm not gonna lie. We got 100% data without a walkthrough, maybe the occasional nudge to find out where the next area was. I think we got lost a couple of times. But once we got 100% data, we pulled that walkthrough up and we looked up every step of the way to get full ending, and no regrets there. I highly recommend doing that because you're going to get lost.
No, definitely. Do as much as you can on your own, but be prepared. If you want to get the ending, full endings, you're going to probably need some form of assistance.
I think that about covers our general opinion of the game, but let's talk specifics on co-op. How does co-op affect the game generally? So I'm going to start by saying I definitely enjoyed the game a lot more in co-op than I would in single player. It is a different experience. It's a lot harder in single player. I think the difficulty is set for single player, so co-op kind of, I wouldn't say trivializes, but it does make the combat and the overall game easier, especially with bosses.
Definitely.
So a lot of the time in single player, you're going to have to dodge the boss's attacks, block at the right time, and the same with enemies. With co-op, there's almost always the opportunity to get behind enemies, to circle them, have one person focus. Bosses can only ever focus on one person at a time, so you've always got one player just running around stabbing them in the back, apart from the one boss where there's actually two people. But imagine that in single player, you've got two people focused on you, and that's probably how it was designed to be fought, and now suddenly you can divide and conquer. So like, co-op makes the game a lot easier, but it doesn't trivialize it. We still struggled in many parts. But I do like the co-op.
Having only played it in co-op, it makes me wonder how a person in single player would tackle those areas as well as those bosses, because we struggled in some bosses and we were trying to be tactful, split up, bash them together. So it does make me wonder if maybe at the same time, if the difficulty curve was also catered for the fact that there is a co-op, and if there's maybe some reduction when you're in single.
No, you're just speaking like someone who hasn't played Dark Souls.
Well, I am a person who has never played Dark Souls.
No, the bosses would be really, really difficult in single player, but that is what they're balanced for. You're just meant to really learn their patterns, learn to only attack at certain opportunities, know exactly when to dodge, that sort of thing. It's not
forgiving.
I wouldn't say we cheesed the game, but we definitely had an easier time than the quote-unquote intended experience.
Alright.
But for me that works because, Souls-likes are often sold on the whole get good, prepare to die bullshit, and I'm not interested in that. I like the mechanics behind a Souls-like. I like the mechanics of exploring and using campsites or rifts or whatever as checkpoints and using them to level up and bring back the enemies. I like the mechanical combat, the exact way it works, but I don't like the difficulty for the sake of difficulty that comes with Dark Souls. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say Dark Souls is fair, and sure, maybe it is, but it was their marketing. They chose to make that their marketing, the whole prepare to die, and that makes me not want to play the game. So if I can play the game and have it be easier, I'm not ashamed of that. It was a fun way to play the game.
Definitely. Like I said before, if it was me playing single player, I probably would have not gone through to the end on this.
That's fair.
It's not for me.
So, specific mechanics for the co-op, we haven't really discussed that. So the way it works is one player is the host, and you invite the other players in. It is actually a bit like Dark Souls, because in Dark Souls it's your game, and then you get other players come into spirits into your game, and it's a very similar experience in this one. So I don't actually know if it does the Dark Souls thing where you can place a thing on the ground and then someone can summon you, because we always directly invited each other, but it's very easy to have your friend join you. You don't have to do some bullshit like in Dark Souls where you have to like place your summon circle in a specific spot and then tell your friend where to find it and hope it appears in his game. You get a code, and then you put that code in your game and you join that other person's game. It's that simple. So we never had a problem with that. The only problem is, of course, and the same could be said about Dark Souls, so it's not a huge issue, is that obviously one player is the host, the main character of that game. The other person is a guest within that game. So it limits what the second player can do. It doesn't limit it that much. You're still there for most of the combats, but like certain doors you can't interact with. There are some items you can't pick up.
Basically, you can't pick up any key items, you cannot read any data or information, cannot go through any transitional doors, like from one area to the other, cannot revive the host.
That's the big thing. Although again, Dark Souls does it, so but it's still something we're allowed to criticize. So if the host dies, all players are brought back to the respawn point, the rift. If the co-op partner dies, then their body leaves a sort of, I guess their spirit's left behind, and you can go and revive them by stabbing yourself and sacrificing half your health. Now, this is pretty much impossible to do in a fight because it takes so bloody long you're gonna die, but after a fight you can revive them. What makes it annoying though is sometimes it bugs out, and the respawn spirit spawns in completely the wrong place, or doesn't spawn, and you just can't find them. And whenever that happened, Adam had to just leave the game and come back, because there was nothing we could do. You're not allowed to transition to a new area. Using the campfire/rifts don't respawn them. You can't fast travel. Like, none of that stuff works if your partner is dead, so they have to leave the game if it bugs out. But that... Yeah. When it happened a few times. Like, we would have one play session where it happened like 3 or 4 times, but then it didn't happen beyond that. So maybe 1 or 2 sessions it happened. So it wasn't a huge problem.
One good thing about that though is whenever I had to kick myself out and get back in, I don't lose anything. So it's not like I'm losing any experience, I'm not losing any items. Because in fact there were times where, say, you were busy and I was just exploring somewhere and trying to make a jump or something, and of course I'd die. I didn't even have to wait for you to come back to revive me. It'd just be a case, right, get off, get back in, and try again.
Yeah, so that's the point worth mentioning, actually. When the main character dies, or in single player, you leave your axioms, they're called, but it's the souls, where you died and you have to go and get them, just like in Dark Souls. But obviously, if the partner dies, then they just leave a respawn point, I guess, for the main character, the host, to go and respawn them, and they lose nothing. So in a lot of cases, Adam was my canary. He'd go into places which were riskier. So if he insta-died, we didn't respawn back at the beginning, and we could carry on. So that's a bit exploitable, I guess. It kind of sucks that second player is very much a secondary character. In fact, I don't know if this was a bug, but in the final boss, the non-optional final boss, the one that everyone's gonna fight, but the final to third final boss if you're doing the main whole ending, Adam couldn't damage the boss at all. So it was weird. It was like Adam was there, and then I had to finish the boss. I had to do all the damage, and the boss only seemed to attack me. It's like Adam was just a spectator, essentially. That might have been a bug. It didn't feel right, but it happened.
I suspect it is a bug, considering that when we went for the full ending, then the other boss, I was able to hurt him.
Yeah, so that was strange. But let's not dwell on that too much, because it's the end of the game. We don't really want to put spoilers in. But that was the thing we had. I don't know. It was weird. Overall, I like the co-op. I think it was a great game, and I probably wouldn't have played it if it wasn't for the co-op. And it made co-op much easier than at least Dark Souls 1. You could just play with your friend. So absolute thumbs up there. I liked it very much.
Agreed.
So I guess ultimately I gotta ask, Adam, would you recommend this game to people, or would you recommend it to anyone in particular, if not in general?
Definitely, a game like this would be a recommendation to play for someone that wants to go into Souls-like or has experienced Souls-like games. If you are a person that has no intention of playing Souls-like games, then it's not a game for you because you're going to get punished big time.
Can I add one thing though, that you were such a person and then you enjoyed it. So perhaps if you think you're not into Souls-likes, but you have a co-op partner that you might enjoy the game with, it might be worth giving it a try.
Yeah, that would have been my second thing, because if you are new to this genre, a co-op person is recommended because they can either guide you or you can experience it together. That's my recommendations for this.
Yeah, and I agree fully. I think, so as someone who is interested in Souls-likes as a genre, but not so much the Dark Souls games themselves, although I'm probably going to give them another go at some point, just because of the get good bullshit, I think this is a great entry point into the Souls-like genre. But get a walkthrough, because you will get lost. It's even better in co-op. If you're a hardcore Souls-like fan, I think you can still get a lot out of this game, maybe solo, so you can really experience the bosses the way they were meant to be experienced, but you know, I don't care. I experienced it the way that I enjoyed experiencing it. There's a lot more in the game than what we experienced. There's apparently so there's this mechanic in the game that we didn't cover where there's different times of day. Essentially, the space station is orbiting some suns, and its position relative to the suns affects the game, so there'll be harder enemies spawning in, certain events that can appear, these survival rooms that you have to fight waves of enemies will only appear during certain eclipses and stuff like that. And then there's like these end game areas where you see this barrier that you can't get through, and you have to go to them at very specific times of day and after completing very specific objectives. And we never even bothered with those. But like, if you want to get super into the game, there's more to it to get involved with. And on top of all that, you can, at the rifts, at the campfire, or whatever, the campsites, you can increase the difficulty of your world or decrease it. So, you know, if the game's a little too easy for you, you can make it harder. In fact, we at one point increased it by mistake and then immediately died and immediately put it back to what it was meant to be.
Yeah, we got our ass handed to us so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we did walk into one of those survival rooms, so maybe just running around a generic combat we might have survived a little longer, but it was an accident raising it anyway, so we lowered it back down. But yeah, so I mean, I think there's plenty in there for you, even if you are a seasoned Dark Souls veteran. And you know, it's just a cool setting. I've played a couple of Dark Souls but sci-fi games, and this is probably my favorite one. I recommend it. I think it's a great game.
No, definitely.
Simply put.
It is a good experience. Just as we said, get a guide and keep it nearby.
Yeah, don't be ashamed to use a walkthrough.
You don't necessarily have to use it from the very start. In fact, we don't recommend it, but you are going to need it at some point, at least towards the end.
Mm-hmm. And for what it's worth, I don't know if it's even worth doing the true ending and fighting that extra boss. Like, if you want to see all the game has to offer and all the content, then do it. But it doesn't exactly give you a huge story and amazing ending. It just...
Yeah, we're still scratching our head on that.
It just kind of ends, to be honest. There's like a weird cinematic at it, and then it ends, and it's like, okay, so what was the point of that? So, you know, do it if you want to, but if you just want to collect the data and end the game there when you can... You're not missing out on too much, to be completely honest. But yeah, I guess that about covers everything we wanted to say about the game. I liked it. I highly recommend it. It has some issues, but I'm probably not going to play it again. I think I got enough out of my one playthrough.
Same here.
But I recommend it. Goodbye,
Take
everyone.
Care. Have fun.